Today, we are going to discuss two important political ideologies in political science. They are part of political theory. The first one is individualism and the second one is fascism. Individualism is developed in 18th and 19th centuries, and fascism is a political ideology of 20th century. In fact, individualism and fascism are against to each other. While individualism insists on individual liberty and limited state role, fascism insists of the subordination of individual to the state having higher powers. So, in today's class, we are going to discuss these theories. Individualism is started in 17th and 18th centuries, 16th and 17th centuries as a political idea, and by 18th and 19th centuries, it was under practice. So, individualism as an idea is started in 16th and 17th century. Different political philosophers have emphasized on the ideology of individualism in 16th, 17th and 18th centuries, and the state has become an individual state in 18th and 19th centuries. So, this political philosophy emphasizes on the moral worth of the individual. So, this is called as individual. Importance given to individual in the political system. Individual as a citizen, individual with rights, individual with liberty, individual as a source of justice. So, individual centric political ideology, that is why it is called as individualism. In fact, the very ideology of individualism is emanated from the writings of John Stuart Mill, John Locke and others, and it started from 16th and 17th century as an idea and ideology. By 18th century and 19th century, many governments of Europe started following individualism as an ideology of the state. So, in today's class, we will be discussing about individualism. Individualism considers the state as a necessary evil. It gives importance to individual worth, individual's rights, individual as a citizen, individual with liberty, individual with freedom, but it does not want any interference from the state or from the society or from the family in the matters of the individual. That is why individualism considered the state as a necessary evil. According to individualists, the state is necessary. Without the state, the law and order problem comes in the society. Society becomes violent, society becomes the handiwork of the dominant people, strong people. So, weak people need to give assistance and protection by the state. So, for this purpose, state is necessary, but state is an evil. State is an evil institution because state curtails the liberty of the individual, state curtails the rights of the people, state curtails the freedoms of the people. That is why state should be there, but it should have limited powers. That is why according to individualism, state is a necessary evil. It is necessary, but it is evil. Evil means it is a negative institution. It is a negative institution because it limits the rights of the people, it limits the liberties of the people, it limits the freedoms of the people, it interferes into the freedoms of the people. That is why it is an evil institution, but it is necessary. Without the state, the society cannot be orderly. The law and order in the society cannot be maintained without a state. So, state is necessary, but the state is an evil. That is why individualism considered the state as a necessary evil. So, this is one of the important aspects of individualism. In fact, the very word individualism is derived from a Latin word, from a French word. that is called laissez-faire theory. Laissez-faire is a French word. The word laissez-faire means leave alone, leave alone, leave the individual alone, do not interfere. You give all freedom to the individual, you give all rights to the individual, do not interfere into the matters of the individual. That is why it is called as leave alone theory or laissez-faire theory. In English we call it individualism. Individualism is known as laissez-faire theory. Laissez-faire is a French word that means leave alone, leave the individual alone. So, there are so many philosophers who have propagated and who have advocated the theory of individualism. Among them, John Stuart Mill, John Locke, Adam Smith, David Ricardo, Thomas Robert Malthus are the advocates of individualism. Among them, two important political philosophers we can see here, John Locke and John Stuart Mill. These are the two important philosophers. John Locke belongs to the 17th century and John Stuart Mill belongs to 19th century. These two important philosophers have propagated and advocated the theory of individualism. They wanted the individual should be given more rights and the individual should have happiness and liberty and the state should not interfere into the matters of the individual. That is why John Locke says there are three natural rights: right to life, right to liberty, right to property. So, these three rights are to be given to the individual and the state should not interfere into the matters of natural rights of the people. That is why individualism believes in non-interference of state. The state should not interfere in matters of individuals. And likewise, John Stuart Mill also propagated more liberty, more rights, more justice to the individual. So, these are the two philosophers, John Locke and John Stuart Mill, who gave more emphasis on individual freedom, individual rights and individual liberties. And we also see other philosophers like Adam Smith, David Ricardo, Robert Thomas Malthus. These are the three economic philosophers. They are the economists and philosophers of economics, and they have also advocated individualism. Individualism is non-interference of state. They do not want any interference of the state in the economic matters or political matters or social matters of the individuals. So, that is why this theory is called as individualism. These philosophers have given the individual more liberty, more freedom, more rights. John Locke, John Stuart Mill, Adam Smith, David Ricardo, Thomas Robert Malthus are the advocates of individualism. And likewise, what are the arguments of individualism? What are the main arguments of individualism? The first one is every individual requires freedom and rights. With freedom and rights, individual can prove himself. In every individual, we have so many innate abilities, inner abilities. So, these inner abilities are to be realized. The inner powers of the individual can be realized only if the individual has sufficient freedom, sufficient liberty, and individual should be given more rights. So, between the freedom of the individual and powers of the state, the individualism supported the individual and it opposed the state. So, in comparison with the state, the individual should have more rights, more powers, more freedoms, more liberties. So, the first point here is freedom of individual and rights. This is the first point. The second one is limited state interference, limited state intervention. The state should not intervene into the matters of the individual. The state should have only minimum functions. it should protect the law and order, it should give medicine or it should provide welfare to the people when there are dreaded diseases in the society. It should also see to it that nobody is deceived in the society. That is all. That means the state should have limited powers. It should not have absolute powers. But individual should have absolute liberty, absolute freedom, absolute rights. But state should have limited powers, limited jurisdiction. That is why freedom of individual and rights is the first point. Limited state intervention is the second point. The third point is private property. Individualism emphasizes on private property. Individual has so many intelligence, talents, abilities. By using his talents and by using his abilities, individual can acquire property. Right to property should be given to individual. Every individual should have the right to property. So, property is the result of human talent. Property is the result of human intelligence. That is why individuals should be given more freedom and more intelligence can be used in acquiring property. Private property is another important aspect of individualism. And fourth one is competition. Individualism emphasizes on competition. There should be free competition in the society. A free competition provides good buyers and good sellers, quality goods, quality rights of the individuals, the consumer rights are protected, the producer's rights are protected, only when there is perfect competition in the society. If the competition is not there, the monopoly capitalists may exploit the society. That is why there should be competition in the society for quality foods, quality products and quality services to the consumers. That is why individualism insisted upon competition. And lastly, individualism emphasizes on the rule of law. Rule of law means equality before law, equal opportunities to all the people. For example, the Indian Constitution and Article 14 of the Constitution and Article 15 of the Constitution provides for equality before law and equal opportunities to all. So, this is how rule of law, that means law is applicable to all the people irrespective of caste, irrespective of gender, irrespective of religion, irrespective of race, irrespective of color of the body, irrespective of the region, all the people should have the same type of rights. That is called equality. Equality is also called as rule of law. Law is applicable to all the people without any exception. So, respecting the rule of law is the argument of individualism. So, let us recapitulate all the 5 important characteristics of individualism. The first one is freedom of individual and rights. Secondly, limited state intervention. And thirdly, private property. And fourthly, competition. And fifthly, the rule of law. So, these are the 5 important aspects of the individualism. Now, let us see what are the different types of the individualism. In the individualism also called as liberalism. Individualism is called classical liberalism, modern liberalism and neoliberalism. There are 3 types here. In the classical liberalism, individual should be given more freedom, more rights. The modern liberalism believes the state activity and also the individual freedom. Individual should have freedom and liberty. At the same time, the state also need to have some powers. And neoliberalism again believes that the state should have limited role. So, these are the 3 types, and there is a lot of criticism against individualism. Individualism believes that the state should have limited powers. it considers the state as a necessary evil, but in reality it is not. State is doing a lot of welfare to the people. It is providing education, it is providing public health, it is providing jobs to the people, it is providing scholarships, it is providing pensions to the disabled and unfit. That is why the state is an instrument of social progress. It is an instrument of socio-economic progress. But individualism believes that the state is a big hurdle for the individual liberty. So, this argument cannot be entertained. State is essential for the development and progress of man. The state should have more role. Actually, individualism believes that the state should have only limited role, but individualism cannot be applied because the role of the state is ever expanding. The role of the state is expanding because the state is involving in welfare activities. There is a lot of welfarism in the society, may it be in the education sector, may it be in the public sector, may it be in the public health sector, may it be in providing employment to the people, millions of people. The state is doing its welfare duties. In such a context, state is an instrument of socio-economic progress. So, giving state less powers and providing individual with more liberty is not at all justified. So, individual may be having rights and freedoms, but at the same time that state should not have less powers at the cost of individual liberty. That is why individuals should have more rights, at the same time the state also should have more powers. So, the criticism that state is a stumbling block in the welfare of the individuals and the freedoms of the individuals is proved as wrong. So, this is how the one criticism against individualism is state is essential for development of progress of man. Secondly, increase in the state activity cannot curtail individual liberty. Individualism believes that the more powers the state have, the less liberty the individual have, but that is a wrong argument. The state should have more powers because the state has to function in fields of public health, transport, communication, education and other sectors. So, that is how increase in the state activity is warranted. When the population is increasing, increase in the state activity is inevitable. That is why state need to have more powers. And third one is individualism supports competition and this results exploitation of labor. Individualism is leading to exploitation of poor people. As a result of the individualism, the people with wealth, with riches, with prosperity are only enjoying the real liberty. The poor people are not enjoying their liberties, their freedoms, because they do not have the means of production in their hands. So, this is leading to the exploitation of rich people by poor, the exploitation by rich people on poor people. This is how the exploitation should be stopped. So, individualism emphasizes on private competition, but this competition may lead to exploitation by rich people on poor people. So, this is another important criticism, and it forgets the role of society in the progress. The society also has some role in the progress of every individual, but this theory forgets the role of the society in the progress of the individual. And lastly, individualism believes the only principle, survival of the fittest. Survival of the fittest is the principle of individualism, but this ideology cannot be entertained because all people are not fit. Some people are stronger, strong people are weaker. So, the poor people must be helped. The welfarism and the welfare dimension of the state should come when some people are poor and some people are unfit. So, if the principle of survival of the fittest is accepted and individualism accepted, the poor people cannot have welfare. That is why individualism's theory that survival of the fittest cannot be entertained. So, friends, these are some of the issues of individualism. And now let us see another important ideology, that is called fascism. Fascism is an ideology of 20th century. It is an ideology that is evolved and grown in the interwar period between First World War and Second World War. It is a phenomenon in Italy, in one of the countries of Europe known as Italy. So, Italy, which participated in the First World War, but it could not get more benefits out of Treaty of Versailles. That is why the leadership in Italy built the country under fascist regime. So, fascism is a totalitarian ideology. A totalitarian ideology means all the individuals, different sectors of public life, individuals politics, individuals economics, individuals social behavior, individuals culture, individuals psychology, individuals technology, individuals education, individuals health, everything is controlled by state. The state has 100% powers. The state has absolute powers. So, that is called as a totalitarian ideology. So, Benito Mussolini is the founder of fascism, and he has founded fascism in Italy. And fascism, the word very fascism is a Roman word. It is derived from a Roman word fascis. Fascis means a tightly bounded bundle of rods around an axe. So, there are bundle of rods and they are bound by axe. Axe and bundle of rods. This is the symbol of fascism. Axe is called as a state. The bundle of rods are the society. So, the society is controlled by a weapon called as the axe. So, this symbolizes the fascism. The word fascism is derived from a Roman word, fascis, that means a tightly bounded bundle of rods around an axe. An axe cuts the trees. An axe is a sharp instrument that is used for cutting of any item. So, an axe and a bundle of rods symbolizes fascis. So, fascism is derived from a Roman word fascism, fascis. So, fascism is an ideology of 20th century. One great philosopher, Robert Paxson, he defined fascism as a form of political practice distinctive to the 20th century that arouses popular enthusiasm by sophisticated propaganda techniques for an anti-liberal, anti-communist, violently exclusionary, expansionist, nationalist agenda. So, this is the definition given to fascism. It is a form of political ideology. It is a form of political practice. It is distinctive in 20th century. It arouses the popular enthusiasm by sophisticated propaganda techniques for anti-liberal, anti-communist, violently exclusionary, expansionist and nationalist agenda. Now, let us see what are the elements of fascism. In fascism, people are given extreme nationalism. People believe that their country is great. That is called patriotism or extreme nationalism, and it is anti-rational. It propagates some blind faiths also. And strong state. State is stronger. State is totalitarian. State controls every aspect of human beings. State has more powers. Individuals should be subordinated to the state. And state is a corporate state. The state is involved in commercial activity. The state is involved in business activity. The state is involved in industrial activity. The state is involved in services activity, production activity. That means, the state not only involves political activities, but it is also involved in economic and commercial activities of the society, and it is called as totalitarianism. Totalitarianism means the individual is totally controlled by the state. Individual's education, individual's health, individual's family, individual's culture, individual's religion, every aspect of the individual is under the control of the state. The state is stronger. State is controlled by fascists. So, fascism is a totalitarian ideology that controls the society and that controls the individuals. So, the individual is under the total control of the state. That is why it is called as totalitarianism. And fascism believes in war and violence. Fascism believes in war and expansionism. It wants to expand the boundaries of its country by invading into other countries. So, it is called as war. It has a strong belief in war and violence, and it believed in the inequalities in the individuals. In some of the rich people, some of the middle classes, some are poor, some are the poorest of the poor. Likewise, there are different economic classes in the society. So, there is individualism and fascism. Of course, fascism believes in inequalities of the individuals, and it is anti-communist. This ideology believes in violence and totalitarianism. It is against to communism, and it is anti-workers. Anti-workers means it does not give workers the rights, it does not grant any leisure to the workers. That is why it is anti-worker ideology, and it also opposes women's freedom. Women cannot enjoy more freedom under this ideology, and it is anti-democracy, racist. It believes that Italian race is the greatest race in the world, and Italians only should rule the whole world. Italians will believe that their race is superior race. Thereby, it propagates racism, inferiority and superiority among the people, and it is anti-democracy. Anti-democracy means it does not allow even minimum rights to the individual, even minimum freedoms to the individual. State is stronger, state is higher, state is totalitarian. So, this is called as fascism. And what are the results? The results of fascism are it generated nationalism and patriotism, it generated repression and violence, and it has led to the Second World War. So, fascism is a totalitarian ideology, and individualism is a liberal ideology which propagates more liberty, more rights to the people. So, friends, today we have discussed individualism and fascism. These two ideologies are against to each other. One is an ideology that gives more rights to the people, the other one is an ideology that gives more powers to the state. So, this is called as individualism and liberalism. Thank you, friends. Thank you.